This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, MICHAEL COVEL. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. My guest today is Tom Bilyeu. He is the co-founder and president of Quest Nutrition. Recently, number 2 on Inc.'s 500 fastest growing companies. He's also the consummate entrepreneur of not starting with all that. He started from scratch, self-made. So many lessons that we can all take from someone that has started here and got to there. I will never get bored with the people that create the stories, create the narratives of entrepreneurial greatness. I just love it. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Tom Bilyeu. Tom, seriously, I want to understand your beginning. You're a guy that was born with a silver spoon. Everything was handed to you. There was no hard work, no deliberate practice. That makes it easy. What can we learn from a guy born with a silver spoon?
That is the most hilarious way to introduce how I started. Yeah, my parents taught me, and I love my parents. Please do not misunderstand me, but my parents taught me to be a good slave. To keep my head down, do as little work as possible, and avoid punishment at all costs. So I came out of my youth as a good employee, right? I didn't have big expectations of my own life. I certainly didn't know how to make things happen. And there was actually a point in my life where I was digging through my couch cushions to find enough change to put gas in my car. The day that qualifies as a silver spoon, we are all in trouble.
Okay, so a few beginning questions. How old are you right now?
39.
39, okay. And where'd you grow up? What state?
Grew up in Washington State.
Paint a picture for me of you as a guy in your mid-20s, your early 30s, because we're going to get into where you are today and how you've built yourself along that path. But the path we're going to talk about in a few minutes wasn't where you always were. What kind of guy were you at 25 or 30 or even 35? Paint that picture a little for the audience.
That's a really interesting question, and you picked some fascinating time breaks. So the brain doesn't stop developing until you're 25, and I took that really seriously. So I didn't have my first drink until I was 26. I was absolutely paranoid of doing things that would distress my brain development. Because in my early 20s, maybe a little bit before, when I went to college, so I had cheated my way through high school. I didn't take it seriously. Always said to myself, well, the reason I don't have to take this seriously is this isn't really what I want to do with my life. And I looked at high school as not really preparing me for the things that I wanted to do. But when I went to college, I thought, wait a second, I'm taking on, a lot of debt to do this. This is supposedly exactly what I want to do with my life, so I better start taking this seriously. I had been reading and researching, trying to navigate the world of, okay, now that I'm taking myself seriously and I'm actually trying to build a life for myself, what does that look like? And I came across that notion that the brain doesn't stop developing until you're 25, and really was an entree into a whole world of brain science, which has really driven a lot of my development. So up until I was 25, I really was proof that the brain hadn't stopped developing. I was completely lost, utterly adrift, just beginning to place together a worldview. I had really discovered reading late in my life, up till about 25, honestly, and I don't know if it was just that my prefrontal cortex wasn't very well developed. I didn't have discipline in my life. I was so lazy, it was crazy. There was actually a period in my life where I would lay in bed for like an extra 2 hours because it was cold. So imagine living your life with so little intent that the mere fact that the temperature is subpar outside of your bed, you just stay in bed. That's so crazy to who I am now.
Did some people at the time think you were a loser?
I think everybody that knew me thought that I was well-meaning, that I was a sweet guy, but that no one at that point in my life, other than maybe my wife, no one thought that I was going to go on to do anything. My own mother, who has, and this is really important for me to say, has always been my biggest cheerleader, always encouraged me to go do great things, but then like has spent the rest of my adult life trying to get me back to live either with her in her ideal scenario or at least near her. I finally asked one time, like, why'd you push me so hard out of the nest only to try and bring me back? And she said, I just always thought you were going to fail. And it was meant with like, there was no malice from my mom. And it was just, I had shown no early signs of going and doing anything. My wife can probably lay claim to actually having believed at that time that I could turn into something, but I think she was one of the few, if I'm honest.
Okay, get me to your 30s. So, because you're with the business, we're going to tell your main business, we're going to talk about in a few moments. That's not where you were 5, 6, 7 years ago. So where were you that kind of, you've got out of your 20s, you're going down a path, you're with the company. Describe your situation.
Around 25, 26, I had started to amass enough knowledge through books that my life really began to change. And I'd been reading things about the brain, and I had always been really interested in psychology. My background's actually filmmaking. And filmmaking is, when done right, is an exercise in psychology. It's about persuasion. It's about trying to craft an environment in which someone feels exactly what you want them to feel, exactly when you want them to feel it. So I had really immersed myself in that world, and going through that, I began to realize that being able to construct a film is really about controlling your own mind. And when you understand your own mind, then you're able to manifest a vision in somebody else's mind. So that process, coupled with the movie The Matrix, which I saw probably when I was about 22, really solidified into me wanting to have control of my own life and to escape the Matrix. And to me, the Matrix is simply an allegory for the limitations that we all place on ourselves through our mindset.
Now, were there people around you? I mean, I'm assuming your cohorts, your peers, even family and friends at the time, they were a part of the Matrix. They weren't seeing what you were starting to see.
Correct. My wife was really the first person that was sort of a fellow traveler desiring to get out of the Matrix and really understood where I was coming from. And then I've had the great fortune of being mentored by just incredible authors, right? People that take the time to write their lessons down. I take that so seriously, and I go into a book with just a humility and a hunger to learn that has transformed my life, truly, in no uncertain terms. And then when I was 26, I think, right about there, I met the guys who are now my business partners. And just from an evolutionary perspective, as humans, they were just farther ahead than I was. And they were the first in-person mentors that I had. And they are just incredible human beings. And they helped me discover the entrepreneurial mindset. And that sort of takes me in that learning process is sort of the end of my 20s and into my early 30s when we were in full swing with our last company, which was a technology company.
Not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot, some of those early books before the personal mentors, are there 1, 2, or 3 that might come to mind that really influenced you early on? Yeah,
for sure. So I've actually written down a list of what I consider to be the ultimate reading list, which you can find on my website, InsideQuest.com. And that is truly, with the exception of one book, is the books that changed my life. And the first one, unfortunately, is more representative of what I learned than what I actually read, because I didn't discover it till a little bit later, but is Mindset by Carol Dweck. And the book that isn't on the list, but was utterly transformative for me, was The Gunslinger by Stephen King, which, as random as that sounds, and I really don't read fiction anymore, but that book was my dad's final attempt to get me to read, because I had always said as a kid, I don't like reading, I hate it, absolutely hate it. My dad said, look, read this book, and if you don't like this book, I'll never bother you to read again. But he had this philosophy that everyone likes to read. People that say they don't like to read just haven't found what they like reading about. Really what I was up against is I to this day am still an incredibly slow reader, just like painfully slow. I was really rejecting my lack of mastery, right? When you're constantly confronted with your inadequacies, pushing through something when you have the fixed mindset that I had, was just brutal. So I didn't do it. But he gave me that book, and the opening line captivated my imagination to just an unparalleled degree. And I ended up reading that whole book. I ended up falling in love with reading, and that leads me down a path. Books like Lynchpin by Seth Godin
awesome book.
Just
awesome book.
First
30 pages of that book are incredible.
Yeah, that book to me is a must read for anybody, no matter what you want to do in life. Like, you've got to read that book.
Yeah.
And one that I came across recently is so powerful that if you can read, you have to read this book, and that is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. That book to me is like the pinnacle of being alive. Like, once you can take extreme ownership for your life, then success is almost an inevitable outcome.
You're in your 30s, you're in your mid 30s, you start this tech company with your partners, your mentors at the time. Now you guys are partners. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here, but it sounds like it was kind of a soul sucking venture. It was maybe making some money, but it wasn't doing it for you. Talk about the feelings of being inside this startup. You guys start this company. Talk about the feelings of being inside and the moment you knew, I have to get out of this.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. It's such a clear story of that we are the architects of our own demise. We built the company ourselves. There was no one else. We didn't take outside capital. There was no one telling us what to do. We bootstrapped the company and we built it to be exactly what we wanted it to be. And we turn around one day and realize that we've created our own nightmare. And the reason we've created our own nightmare is so logical, and it makes so much sense that I get how so many people get trapped by this. And you actually had a podcast, it must have been just a few weeks ago, where you were talking about money solves money problems, right? And it doesn't solve problems that aren't money related. So we were living the nightmare of money can't buy happiness, which is ironic because we're three guys that really believe in the power of money. Like, money is the great facilitator, and the stuff that Bill Gates is doing with malaria, he's doing because he has access to resources, right? So money is meant to facilitate something, it's meant to do something. But if you don't know what that something is, if you're simply living in the world of making money, it truly is just soul destroying, at least for me. And I'm not saying this is good or bad, but I'm wired to find joy in helping other people rise up and succeed. Like, I just love that. So not being able to do that and building a company that was designed, my partners and I actually had a pact. We made each other a promise that we would do no matter whatever it took to be more profitable. So if that meant that you had to skip an anniversary, you skipped it. If it meant that you had to work nights, weekends, give anything up, because we were trying to get rich. We did it. And so for like 6.5 years, other than taking a break at Christmas to see family, I didn't take a day off. It was, if I was awake, I was either working or working out. That was it. Like, that was the sum total of my life. And it was finally my wife who said, hey, at some point, like, this just isn't worth it. That I realized, okay, wait a second, I need to at least love what I do on a day-to-day basis. Looking around, we're having success. In 2010, our technology company was named as the 42nd fastest growing company in technology in North America. So we're making money, we're winning awards. But we're just like, man, this isn't fun. And I finally was so desperate and so unhappy that I had the courage to say to these guys that, look, I know we have this pact, we'll do whatever is more profitable, but I'm not having fun anymore, and I want to enjoy my life. And it was one of those moments where they were just like, oh my gosh, us too, like, we've got to change direction. So at the height of our success, we sold that company, and on just sort of a vision of what life could be, we started a company that we didn't know if it would turn into anything, man. And looking back now, when people see the success we've had, people think, oh, well, you know, of course, that just makes sense. But at the time, it wasn't. And again, on your podcast, somebody said, it's so hard to recapture your mindset of ignorance, but we really didn't know. Like, we didn't know, is this going to work or not? We just knew it's a product I want for myself. And I believe in what we're trying to accomplish. And so we said, cool, we're going to build this company and we're going to ask one question and one question only. And that question is, how do we deliver more value to our customers than anyone else? And that's it. And even if it's less profitable, if it delivers more value, we're going to do it. We're not fools. We understand that you have to have a company that's financially viable. And of course, we make sure that we're profitable. But that's not the leading question. The leading question is, what brings more value to the customer? Once
you left the tech company, was this your moment that you were coming into the new firm? We're going to talk about that now. You've now made your first million. Yes? No?
Yes.
Okay. So you're coming, but there's a lot of people in this world that have made their first billion. I mean, I just saw the other day, I'm in Asia, and Beijing is saying there's 550 billionaires living in Beijing. I mean, it's cool.
Oh, did you ask me if I made my first billion?
Million.
Okay. I was like, whoa, let me not misrepresent here.
No. So money is having money, though, however, doesn't guarantee, and there's plenty of people with money, it doesn't guarantee that, okay, now we're going to make an investment in something else. We're going to invest ourselves. We're going to start a whole new company. Oh, it should just happen because one has some money. That's not exactly how it works either, is it?
No. And we sunk I went from, in our technology company, I was making more money than I'd ever made in my life. And then went to being broke again to launch this company because we tied everything up in it. I was the first one to leave. Because look, I think everybody should, one, it's very easy for us to mythologize the creation of Quest, and I think that would do some people a disservice. We hedged our bets. We sold a controlling interest in our previous company. All of us were going to stay there while we started Quest, but it became very clear that the new CEO and I did not see eye to eye. As I helped him terminate employees within the company, I said, look, I think there's one more person you have to fire. And he was like, oh, who's that? I said, me. And it was because he believed that marketing was spreadsheets and I believed that it was storytelling. And the whole reason that we sold the company in the first place was I was no longer willing to act out of step with who I am as a person. Like, I was going to be authentic. And the truth was, I wanted to connect with my audience. I wanted to understand what they needed in a product. I wanted to see how my products were impacting their life. And I wasn't going to give that up, and I wasn't going to stare at a spreadsheet all day. So we parted ways. But to be respectful, I said, look, I'll transition out slowly, but cut my pay to virtually nothing, and then let me go start this crazy side project, Quest. Let me see if I can get that off the ground. So he's thinking, whoa, this is awesome. I get all of his historical knowledge. I'm paying him an absolute fraction of what he was making. And, if he wants to go delude himself that this nutrition company is actually going to do something, then let him do that.
A few years ago, I'm living in San Diego. I can walk into the Whole Foods. I can see an army of protein bars, everything under the sun. How in the world do you decide that's where you're going?
It's really easy. Once you stop saying what's going to make me rich, because if we had said, hey, what's going to make us rich, we wouldn't have gone into this. But we said, how can I deliver value to people? And there were, I think in 2009, so this is a year before we launched the company. In 2009, there was something like 1,400 flavors of bars and or companies. And people were saying, we actually had a guy say to us when we tried to sell Quest to him, I need another protein bar like I need another hole in the head. But even with all of those bars in the market, there was not a single one that the three of us would eat. Not a single one. Either the bars had good macronutrients, but they tasted terribly, or they had good taste, but nutritionally they were an absolute disaster. And you had some of the biggest protein bars on the market with 30 grams of sugar. It was so criminal to us that we just couldn't get our heads around the fact that was the state of the industries. We never thought we would be a protein bar company. We've always viewed ourselves as a food company, but we could see that was the in. We could go to the people that understood a protein bar, they understood nutrition, and they were a group of influencers, right? Because it's not, my mom's not eating a protein bar, and my mom's not a nutritional influencer. We wanted to go where nutritional influencers were going, but they'd been abandoning the category for a few years, so the category is declining, it's overcrowded, but it's declining because nobody's innovating. Nobody's bringing something new to the market. So we said, okay, cool. We're either going to do this right or we're not going to do it at all. What does right mean? It means no sugar. It means a limited number of ingredients. It means keeping things as simple as possible, but also it's got to taste amazing. So if we can pull that off, we will do it. If we can't, we won't. We went to, because we never planned to manufacture. We went to all the contract manufacturers out there that made bars and with our formula, and we thought we were so clever for making this formula. They said, hey, the formula is great, but just so you guys know, you can't make that bar. It is literally impossible to make. We thought, wow, how is that possible? And so as we're talking to them, we realized over the last 60, maybe 70 years, the equipment has been engineered to produce products that use high fructose corn syrup. Now, high fructose corn syrup is many things. It's cheap. It's delicious. It preserves the product so it has shelf life. and it makes it incredibly pliable. Now, the incredibly pliable part during production is something we never thought of. We didn't know anything about manufacturing. We were just like, okay, these guys must be fools, and we have what we call the Quest belief system. And number one of the Quest belief system is you can do anything you set your mind to without limitation. Now, if that's true, then we should be able to figure out how to manufacture this protein bar that everybody else says is impossible. And since we made ourselves a promise, we were going to do it right, or we weren't going to do it at all, and we were going to do that which brings value, and adding sugar was not going to bring value, we decided, well, we've got two options. Either not do it, or we have to engineer our own equipment. So here you've got three guys coming out of technology. They know nothing about food. They know nothing about manufacturing. They certainly don't know anything about engineering their own equipment, having the guts to say that, hey, we can do anything we set our minds to. I've got two partners, Mike and Ron. And Mike is, he is quite literally an Iowa farm boy. He looked at the equipment, because we ended up buying equipment and trying to prove these guys wrong, only to find out that they were absolutely right. The equipment that existed simply will not produce the bar that we wanted to make. But he's looking at it, and he says, if you let me cut it apart and re-engineer it, I can make this work. And we thought, wow, we're pot committed now. We've put a ton of money into this equipment. If he cuts it apart and it doesn't work, we're kind of screwed. But hey, let's give it a shot. You know, we just believed so much in what we were trying to accomplish. So he cut it apart, welded it back together, and it worked. And it ended up being this inflection moment and has become such an important thing within the story of Quest, and the thing that we want all Quest employees and honestly the people that buy into the brand to understand what we represent, which is that belief that you can learn what you need to learn. And if you are willing to accumulate enough skills, there really is no limit to what you can do.
Let me break this down in terms of nutrition, because I don't think before you started this company you had a wide nutritional background. Perhaps you were just an average guy. I don't know. You probably were a pretty healthy guy, but I'm guessing you didn't really have this nutritional understanding at the level of detail you need to run the company that you run now. And I want to pass along a thought to you and let you go with it as well. So I'm currently in Saigon right now, and I would call the typical height and weight of a Vietnamese woman would probably be about 5'3" to 5'4", and about 100 pounds, 105 pounds. Not anorexic by any stretch of the imagination, just a normal kind of weight. And when I have these conversations with them about America and body shapes in America and obesity in America, they just have this quizzical look on their face. They can't understand it. And so one of the benefits of your work right now, clearly, is to help people thinking about eating right. But why don't you go from a big picture standpoint and let's try and unpack obesity in America? It's a disaster right now.
It is a disaster, and to me it's really a pandemic, and there are places like Vietnam that are currently outside of that bubble, but I married a British woman, and 15 years ago when I first went to England, you didn't really see a lot of obese people. I mean, they were there, but not like in America. But now it is almost indistinguishable from America just 15 years later. And what you've got going on is you have the ubiquity of incredibly delicious food made from horrific ingredients. And I mean horrific from a metabolic standpoint. The reaction that your body has to those kinds of carbohydrates and sugar is just absolutely catastrophic when taken in the quantities that people are taking them in. We wanted to acknowledge a truth, which is that we've got however many thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years of evolution pushing at our backs, telling us to eat things that are sweet, because things that are sweet are stores of readily available, easily digested, and turned into energy, like right now, ingredients, calories. So that made sense when you had to climb a 120-foot tree with no safety apparatus, reach into a beehive, get stung head to toe just to bring back a handful of sugar. It makes sense because you have to work your ass off. You got to take significant risks to pull that off. You're not going to do it every day. It's going to be very rare that you and your tribe have access to sugar in those quantities. But now when you've got a grocery store around every corner and you've got that evolution pushing you at your back to eat that stuff, and food is like a drug, and it is an incredibly effective drug. If you're in a bad mood, a bowl of ice cream actually will cheer you up. I can put you in an fMRI machine and see the truth of that statement, right? Sugar affects dopamine just like cocaine affects dopamine. It's incredibly powerful. So when you've got a grocery store around every corner, you've got people with this desire to eat this stuff, and you've got this reward mechanism kicking off in the brain when they do it, you get the problem that we have today. To me, the solution is never going to be eat less and exercise more. And that's been what people have been spouting since the 60s. And the truth of that is it works for a narrow range of people, right? Like for me, that's perfectly fine. I can do that. And I lost 60 pounds with that, advice. Hey, exercise more and eat less. Cool. Got it. The vast majority of people on the planet, they're not interested. It's not a priority for them. They love food too much. They've got a lot of other things going on in their life. And quite frankly, I think a lot of people are just bitter that if a piece of cake is going to cheer them up, it's going to put them in a good mood instantly, that they don't get to enjoy that. So our thing is, well, wait a second. If I'm trying to influence behavior, let me not fight against the stream of biology here. Let me go with it. So if I can make food that you choose based on taste, that you covet, that you want, but it happens to be good for you, I should be able to win this battle. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And we're putting a ton of time and energy into figuring out from a metabolic standpoint what is actually good for you. And to answer your earlier question about whether or not I knew enough about nutrition to be running a nutrition company, in the beginning, honestly, no, I knew more about it than the average person, but my business partner, Ron, has been obsessed with nutrition for decades. And it's echoed in his physique. If you look at that guy, so like I have some muscle, I'm pretty lean. This dude's a freak. He's big, he's lean, he has proven that at least with his body, that he knows exactly what to do. It's utterly astonishing what he's accomplished.
One of the things that I love about you talking about obesity and nutrition, and a rationale for it, is the autopilot thought process. Why don't you describe us being on autopilot and how that affects our choices?
Yeah, I mean, you can take that well beyond nutrition. And I do a show called Inside Quest, where my goal is to wake up as many people out of the matrix as humanly possible. And essentially what that means is get people off autopilot. Get people, like, they have all these beliefs that run in nested subroutines in their brain that tell them certain things about the world, fear, insecurity, whatever the case may be, and stops them from really becoming the person that they want to become or could become, to accomplish the things that they want to accomplish. Getting people to really realize that just from a sheer volume of data that your brain has to process, the vast majority of that is going to play out at the subconscious level. And the people that really achieve things in their lives are the ones that know how and when to dip into the subconscious to say that behavior does or does not serve me. So one of the 25 bullets of the Quest belief system is do that which moves you towards your goals. Do not do that which moves you away from your goals. And it's do and believe. And the second part, the believe part, is the really important part. Because I find a lot of times people believe things about themselves that don't serve them. So for instance, you can do anything you set your mind to without limitation. You and I both know that's a lie. Now, you didn't call me on it when I first said it. And the reason that I say it, even though I know it's a lie, is that it's an empowering lie. And so I'm going to believe that lie. Because I do and believe that which moves me towards my goals. And if my goal is to end metabolic disease, to completely revolutionize the food industry, to allow people to create a near superhuman version of themselves through food, if I'm going to do that, I've got to believe that it's possible. I've got to believe that if I put my mind to it, that I can do it. Couple that with somebody who's deeply insecure, right? Deep insecurity comes from a belief that they're inadequate. That, to me, is the terrifying part about autopilot. That routine is just running in the back of their head, and they're playing this narrative over and over and over about how they're unlucky, or they just get dealt a bad hand, bad genetics, bad upbringing, whatever the case may be. But it's auto replaying in their head. And until they can shake themselves out of that and realize that belief does not serve me, that belief makes me insecure, that belief makes me afraid to take that first step. And that's why I tell my story so raw and so naked. Look, I used to be a total fuck up. That's just the truth of the matter. I did not show any signs of doing anything great. I justified my own head laying in bed for an extra 2 hours because I didn't want to be cold. Like, things that now, it is so embarrassing to me that was true of me, but it was true. And the reason that I tell people that is so they understand, like, look, you're seeing the after photo, right? You're seeing the guy that finally figured this shit out, got out of his own way, stopped believing things that held me back, stopped believing things that diminished who I was, decided to believe things that empowered me, decided to believe that I could grow and get better. These are all decisions, right? I could have wallowed in my insignificance or not having been born with a silver spoon in my mouth or whatever the case, but I made very different choices about what to believe, and that shook me out of my autopilot. And man, if people can do that, like if they can begin to actively construct their mindset and their belief system around the things that move them towards their goals, it will change everything about their life, everything.
Just so I don't sound like grass is greener on the other side, in the last few years in Asia, I have seen just an influx, especially in a developing country like Vietnam. Starbucks, KFC, McDonald's, it's just, Popeyes just pouring in. So you are 100% right. And I think the math and science will say that if people that have had generally good diets are all of a sudden bombarded with our American fast food, we know the end result in a few years, or it could be even faster than that. But I would love for you to expand on something. You have your products in 70 countries. I think this would be interesting for other entrepreneurs out there. Look, every country has their own rules, their own importing, things you've got to deal with. Can you pass along maybe a specific instance that might be really colorful about dealing with a particular country, or overall, perhaps some lessons for other entrepreneurs to think about if they want to, have their product on the shelf in 70 countries?
When you're dealing with food and international regulations, it will make you want to punch everyone you come across. Like, it is so crazy and absolutely offensive to me that there are ingredients here in the U.S. that are deemed generally recognized as safe, but you go to Canada, which a lot of people will call the 51st state, and they're like, nope, we're not having it. And then as you really boil down and look at the actual science, not correlative data, but actual causative science, there's nothing. It's like, who are making up these rules? Like, what's their goal? And here's why it offends me. It offends me because I know that sugar is causing massive problems, right? So when you look at type 2 diabetes, or they're now even calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes, it's a blood sugar disorder of the brain. Like, we know that there's certain dietary problems. I don't think anybody credible in science is saying no, sugar in any amount is not a problem. Everyone's at least going to say there's a threshold amount over which it is problematic, and it's deeply problematic. And you can just look at the way the body regulates sugar in the bloodstream, right? So you've got mechanisms to make sure that your blood sugar stays very even keel, and if you go too high, you have diabetes, and obviously that can lead to death. And if it goes too low, then you've got hypoglycemia, and you've got a problem on that end, and you can also die. So it's like your body tightly regulates that. So we know the body's incredibly sensitive to that. There are other things, and by the way, there are no restrictions on what you can do with sugar. I can actually sell you things like Fun Sticks, which are a stick of sugar. All of that's fine. And by the way, I think it should be legal. I think I have every right to decide what I want to put into my body. Now, this is a guy who makes his living by giving people a different alternative, so I have no love for those products, but I definitely have a love for choice. And there are times I'll be the first to tell you, man, when I go to Vegas, I'm going to Vegas for my birthday here in the near future, and I will eat every terrible thing I can get my hands on, and I will love every bit of it, right? And when you do it in a controlled manner, when you have powerful options that are also healthy for you, but also taste as good, that to me is the win-win. So I don't think we legislate our way out of this problem. I wouldn't want that, because first of all, people have been saying that saturated fat is bad. I wouldn't want somebody to take saturated fat out of my diet. I think it's critical, and I know how controversial that is. I don't want legislators deciding that kind of thing at a micro level. At a macro level, look, there's probably some big swags. They definitely need to keep us safe. They definitely need to make sure that we're not taking things that are toxic. I mean, there's a layer of the bureaucracy that's absolutely valid, but it can get out of hand. And so, just because I know you asked for one specific thing, I'll give you one specific example of monk fruit, which here in the U.S., and it's a sweetener, it's natural. It's considered perfectly safe in the U.S. and considered unusable in Canada. So it's like all that stuff just causes drama in a food company where you end up having to change a formulation either by country, or you have to keep going backwards until you have one that's universal.
Do you sleep good?
It depends. Like last night I slept terribly just because I had a lot of stuff on my mind, but normally I sleep like a baby. I don't use an alarm. I haven't used an alarm in over 12 years. So I get an absurd amount of sleep.
I had a guest on my show. The episode is not live yet, but you probably know of him. A psychologist named Anders Ericsson. He is the deliberate practice expert. He's got a great new book coming out called Peak that I know you will enjoy. It comes out in April. But why do you speak to deliberate practice? Because sometimes, again, people, they might hear the glossy elements, but your life, your world is mastering one baby step, mastering another baby step. It's an iterative process. Build. It's not like this guy who just, takes this massive one swing and you hit a home run. People might see that in the press releases today, but that's not how it happened. It was this very deliberate, systematic, step by step by step by step. Could you almost call it boring?
No, but I so agree with you. I actually tell people all of life is but disciplined practice. So as you can imagine, a company our size, we get sued routinely. Yay, it's so much fun.
What do you get sued for? Okay, tell me that in a second.
The list has many folds in it. But the reason that I say that, so when we get sued, the reason that I say that all of life is but disciplined practice is to remind myself I'm going to learn something from this. So even this thing, which is typically mundane, and it's just somebody trying to get money out of us, and it doesn't have merit, which is why most of them get dismissed. But nonetheless, I'm going to go through this period, and I'm going to have to deal with this. But with the right frame of mind, I can learn from this, and I can grow, and I can get better, and I can garner some new skills. So to me, all of life is but disciplined practice. Whether you're trying to get better at leadership, whether you're trying to get better at your finances, whether you're trying to get better at your particular job, play an instrument, learn a foreign language, be better with your wife, like whatever you're trying to do, if you realize every time you fail, every time you face an inadequacy, that's just an opportunity to get better. Look, that's not going to be anyone's natural state, right? You're going to have to teach yourself to think like that, but it's such a powerful framing to where if you push that long enough, you can actually get to the point, and this is why I say it's not boring, you get to the point where I actually get a little bit giddy inside when somebody points out something that I'm doing terribly wrong. And it's really funny to me when somebody's trying to do it to tear me down. If you know Nassim Taleb, he talks about being anti-fragile. Now, anti-fragile isn't robust. It isn't resilient. Those are things that eventually break. It just takes a very long time for them to break. They can withstand a lot of pressure, impact, whatever. But being anti-fragile, according to him, is a system that gets stronger the more you attack it. When people can build their self-esteem in a fashion that is anti-fragile, everything in your life is going to be phenomenal and sets up this notion of discipline practice perfectly. So let me walk you through what I did. When I was younger, I very much had a fixed mindset. I believed that my talents and my intelligence were innate. I could never improve them, so I was always trying to put myself into a position where I was the smartest person in the room, that I was always right, because being right feels great. Even when I was wrong, if I could at least convince the other people that I was right, I could at a minimum get the reflection back from them that I was right, even though internally I knew I was wrong. And that felt good. It was tenuous, and it always felt like, oh God, like I was always uneasy that it could go away at any second, and I constantly felt like I had to campaign to create a belief of who I was in other people's minds. That just was moving me against my goals, and I realized that one day because here I am, I'm with Mike and Ron, these two guys are so smart. They had this idea, and it was a great idea, it was way better than my idea, but because I wanted to be right, I kept arguing, and I finally actually convinced them that my wrong idea was right. And in that moment, I had this holy shit moment of, oh God, like I just won that argument. I should feel really good. But if I'm actually trying to create wealth, which is what I was focused on at the time, then I just moved myself backwards because my idea actually is worse. Like it will make us less profitable. So what am I doing? And in that moment, I realized I was actually not acting in accordance with my goal of generating wealth. I was acting with this subroutine that was running automatically on autopilot in my brain about the desire to feel good over being right. And then I built my self-esteem around being right. And I thought, what would happen if instead of building my self-esteem around being right, which is a very fragile way to live, I built my self-esteem around identifying the right answer faster than anyone else? Because then that would be in line with my goals. I need to build self-esteem. Everybody needs self-esteem. Everybody has ego. Anybody that tells you they don't have ego either is completely delusional or they're lying. Ego's awesome, man. It's where your confidence comes from. It's what allows you to set a vision for yourself and go execute on that vision. Ego does not need to be synonymous with being a jerk, right? It doesn't need to be synonymous with being self-centered. It just needs to be synonymous with having a robust sense of self that allows you the courage to go and conquer the things you want to conquer. I switched my belief system over my self-esteem over to being the one that could identify the right answer faster than anyone else, that was willing to admit when I was wrong faster than anyone else. And then I actually began to develop truly feeling good about myself when someone would say you're wrong. And I'd be like, oh my God, you're actually right. And I was really willing to look at that nakedly. So when people lob, emotional grenades my way or try to attack me or, whatever, just take an easy one, call me stupid or whatever, I'm like, rad. If you're actually right and I really am wrong about this and I'm undereducated and I'm dumb on this topic, that's fantastic because I've gotten pretty far in my life. So if I've gotten this far in my life with that wrong belief, how much farther can I go once I believe the right way? Once your self-esteem isn't tied up in being right, you don't struggle with that emotion anymore. And so it actually becomes a fun moment to realize, oh my God, I actually am wrong about this. This is fantastic.
I'm lucky I have this podcast because I get to talk to people like you, like-minded people. But, when you venture out in the real world, you're right about some of the criticisms that come your way. I find today the numbers of people that want to protect the fragile ego, the logical fallacies that are thrown into arguments, sometimes I just look at the discussion. They think they're having an open interchange with me, but I just kind of look at them and I say, man, don't you realize that every psychological issue that you don't want to face is like tattooed on your forehead and we can all see it?
Dude, that is like a terrifying question. And I am right there with you. And here's the thing, and this may be stupid, but like part of my life mission is how many of those people can I reach? How many of those, and I want to reach them because I had spent so many years of my life there. Like if you and I had met 20 years ago, I would be that guy that you're like, the psychological issues are tattooed on your face. Like you were clearly a mess. But because I couldn't see it, like I really was lost. And that's why the Matrix became the perfect allegory for me, because it was this guy who felt he could be more, he felt he could do more, but he had to learn to be somebody in control, right? And it changed everything about my life. And I really did. And this is a story that resonates with me when I remind myself of the truth that this really was my experience. And I hope it resonates with other people. But so when I graduated from college, and I'm very grateful, my parents, really did, they were just awesome. And they, paid for my college tuition, what they could. I took on tens of thousands of dollars in debt personally, but they got me through college. But then the day I graduated, they did not give me another dime after that, ever. I went through bouts of unemployment and, going into the unemployment office. And there was a time where I was scrounging through my couch cushions to find enough change to put gas in my car. That's like a real story. All of this paints this background for me of, I know what that's like. I know what it means to feel lost. I know what it means to not understand how to take control of your life. It's not even that I wasn't willing. I didn't understand how to do it. So for me, once I finally began putting the pieces together, I started reading, I started coming across mentors, people like Seth Godin, people like you with these crazy podcasts, which sadly did not exist back then, but people that think like you think. You just start encountering enough of these people through any means that you can, and suddenly your life begins to change. And as my life changed, and has since changed incredibly dramatically, and it's not only changed my life, it's changed the lives of my family, I made myself a promise that I would pay this mindset forward to as many people as I can. And so people are always asking me the question, because I put so much effort into Inside Quest. So you've got Quest Nutrition, which is the company that makes all the food. And then you've got Inside Quest, which is totally mind-oriented. We don't sell anything. It's designed to do two things: show you what the brand really stands for so that people can feel good about their association with the brand, because we're really about the whole mind-body connection. And then two, just to get as many people over that hurdle as possible, to go from feeling out of control in their life to giving them the tools that they need to actually get rid of those psychological things that they're struggling with that are so clearly printed on their face.
Let me ask one more thing, Tom, as we wind down. Just as a great kind of entrepreneurial question. I know you have some insights about this, and frankly, you can tell, as an outsider, you can tell this is what you do with your company. It's not an easy question. There's a lot of different answers, but perhaps you could think of one thing about talking to your true fans. The true fans, and I know I've made this mistake over the years. I try and be liked by too many people, but the reality is, I think it goes back to something you said earlier too, is if you do something that you really like, it's amazing how many true fans will come along with something that you really like. And maybe I'm answering the question here, but why don't you talk about, from your perspective, true fans and maybe some of the insights that you've seen about reaching your true fans?
You know, the opening of your show really hit me, and I've heard so many of your episodes now, and I love that, and I'm going to mess up the exact verbiage, but you know, this is me, raw, real, that's my passion. And I thought, yeah, man, that really, really resonates with me, and I think speaks to why your show has become as successful as it's become. And this occurred to me back in the late 90s. Have you ever heard of furries?
Furries.
Yeah, it's I find it strange, but hey, literally no judgment. It's just not my thing. But people dress up like stuffed animals, and it's a turn on for them. And so they want to be around other people that are dressed up like furry animals. It's crazy. And they have a convention. And I thought, wait a second. You can fill a convention hall with people that like to dress up like furry animals for sexual reasons. That was so unexpected for me that I thought, okay, no matter who you are, there is a tribe out there for you. There's a great quote, and I wish I could remember who it was. It might be Joseph Campbell, don't hold me to that, but that the greatest joy of your life is being who you truly are. That resonated with me so much, and I had spent so many years trying to be somebody else, and I thought, you know what, when we do this new company, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be me from top to bottom. And the reason I'm going to be me and purely authentic is in this day of social media where you are hyper connected with your customer and your true fans. In that moment, if you catch me off guard at, let's say I'm out at a restaurant, if you wake me up in the middle of the night and punch me in the head, you're going to get the same exact answers and attitude that you will get in this podcast. Mm-hmm. This is me, right? And I get it. Some people are going to love what I say and some people are not. But man, if I just want to be in a position where I'm being me, I'm being my authentic self, I'm open, I'm willing to learn. I consider myself a learner. I don't consider myself an expert. I'm just here trying to figure this stuff out. I'm trying to pay it forward and share what I've learned with as many people as I can. When you do that, your fans, your true fans, they become your tribe, right? Because they believe in what you believe. They're trying to accomplish some similar things that you're trying to accomplish. Humans want to connect, and that is one of the most beautiful things to come out of the social revolution, is you actually get a chance to magnify your true and authentic voice and hear back from other people who think like you think, that your words resonate with them, their words resonate with you, and now you get into this virtuous cycle within this community, and it is incredible. So yeah, man, true fans to me are why I do this. If they didn't exist, then I just wouldn't be chasing this. Knowing that people really resonate, that's what it's all about.
Tom, I appreciate you coming on today. Where can we send people, Tom? Where's the best place to go find out more about you? They can buy Quest bars just about anywhere, 70 countries. Where can they go more to find out about you online, you, your firm, your partners, everything?
There's a couple places. One, there's questnutrition.com if you want to know anything about the products. That's our pride and joy that we've built from the ground up. And then there's insidequest.com, which really is a portal to our YouTube series. So you can also find it at youtube.com/InsideQuest. We've got just amazing videos doing a somewhat similar thing that you and I are doing now. It's awesome conversations with really interesting people that have got a lot to teach me, and hopefully the other people that are watching, it's a ton of fun. And then I'm super social, so if people follow me everywhere, no matter the platform, it's always the same. It's at Tom Bilyeu. My last name is spelled B as in Bravo, ILYEU.
Tom, I appreciate it. Thank you for coming on.
Man, thank you for having me on. It's been absolutely an honor, and your show is fantastic. So as a listener, I thank you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.